Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński. Welcome on board the Eastern Express. And as always, I hope you enjoy the journey ahead. On this episode, we're talking about Serbia, which is a country that doesn't often dominate international headlines, but is currently making the moves that the rest of Europe simply cannot ignore. After months of protests in which thousands of Serbians have been pouring into the streets, demonstrating against President Aleksandar Vučić, the Prime Minister has just resigned. And believe me, when citizens start rattling the cage of a leader who feels like he's king of the Balkan castle, you can bet something interesting is brewing. So without further ado, let's take a look at our latest report to find out more.
The mass protests that have been sweeping over Serbia in the last few months seem to be having an effect. They have been ongoing since the collapse of a railway station roof in Novi Sad in November. 15 people died in the incident. The protests and the government's response to them have led the country's prime minister to resign.
After the last night's event in Novi Sad, my irrevocable decision is to resign from the position of the Prime Minister of Serbia.
The protesters, many of whom are students, say this is nowhere near enough, however. Thousands are dissatisfied with the current state of Serbia's politics.
The Prime Minister's resignation means nothing to the students. Our demands are clear, and we will continue protesting no matter who resigns.
For now, at least, the country's president, Aleksandar Vučić, is striking a conciliatory tone.
The students were fair. They stuck to these 4 demands and didn't add on like some others. I hope that it will be enough, but I am not sure about that.
The incident in Novi Sad has led many people to question the state of the country's infrastructure. Protesters decry systemic corruption and a lack of accountability from their leaders. The largest of the demonstrations in Belgrade reportedly attracted over 100,000 people, a clear sign to Serbia's government that something has to change.
And now, as always, it's time to examine the issue in greater detail. So, what exactly has stirred the pot enough to warrant such big changes? Well, a lot of it has to do with discontent that has been bubbling for quite a while. People are frustrated over questionable legislative moves, environmental concerns, and a general sense that some aspects of democracy are taking a permanent sick day. For instance, some protesters are angry about new investments and projects, like large-scale mining, that may threaten local communities and ecosystems. Others feel that elections and the media landscape are so tightly controlled that the only way to express genuine opposition is to march down Belgrade's boulevards, waving signs that say, "Vučić, we see what you did there." And let's not forget, this is happening against the backdrop of a broader concern about Serbia's future, especially in its relationship with the European Union. You see, Aleksandar Vučić likes to present himself as a stable partner to the West, while also keeping a foot in the East, making eyes at Russia and maintaining good ties with China. Picture the Serbian president double or triple dipping his chip in every available salsa. That approach might help him juggle various foreign interests. Some Serbians are wondering, however, if we're flirting with everyone, are we committed to anyone? Now, protests in Serbia aren't exactly a new thing, but what is special this time is that they are bigger, longer lasting, and have now in essence brought about the resignation of their prime minister. By continuing to show up en masse, they are demonstrating that maybe there are cracks in that seemingly monolithic support. The real test is whether these protests will spark a broader change. Are we about to see new leaders emerge from this swirl of frustration? Will the government be forced to make more concessions, like ensuring fair elections or limiting presidential powers? One thing is clear. Every strongman's worst nightmare is a persistent, organized crowd of citizens who simply refuse to give up. President Vučić has tried to frame these protests as political stunts orchestrated by his opponents. But that dismissive attitude only galvanizes protesters even further. If you tell people that their genuine grievances are fake news, they are likely to get angrier, louder, and more creative. At the end of the day, these protests are about more than just Vučić. They're about the direction Serbia is headed. we might be witnessing a pivotal moment in Serbian politics, one in which the people decide that leadership can't just be about controlling power structures, but about actually listening to their concerns. And now, here to shed more light on the issue is Besford Recaj, Associate Professor at the University of Pristina. Hello and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello, and thanks for having me.
So, Miloš Vučić, the Serbian Prime Minister, is stepping down. Is it going to change a lot? Because many of the protesters are saying this is not about particular people, this is about state capture.
Yes, I think you're right in your statement. And what we are seeing happening in Serbia has different connotations. And it's not only about tragedy that happened in Novi Sad with the train station, but it's about different stagnations in important processes in Serbia, such as, for example, we have backdrop in democracy. We have state captures, as you mentioned, from the head of the state, which is President Aleksandar Vučić. And we have a rule of an autocratic regime. We have a regime that is trying to wiretap its citizens. And we have a state that is all about, I can say, a one-man show, primarily about the, let's say, comfort and staying power of Aleksandar Vučić. And therefore, I see that resignation of the Prime Minister of Serbia, as well as resignation of other important figures, such as Minister of Infrastructure, as well as Mayor of Novi Sad, as merely a sacrificial lamb in order to survive the Aleksandar Vučić and his regime.
So it's a symbolic gesture, right? But there is another thing, because obviously Miloš Vučić used to be the mayor of the city of Novi Sad, so that is perhaps aimed at addressing at least the issue of what he might have been doing when the contracts for the renovation in question were made. But you touched upon something really important, and this aligns with what Freedom House has said quite recently about Serbia, that this is a hybrid regime that has a tendency not towards democratization, but the other way around, towards a greater degree of authoritarianism. Would you agree with that classification? And also, would you say that there is any way out of this at this stage, out of this backsliding?
Well, I agree with transparency with Freedom House, but also we have other important international reports coming from governmental and non-governmental organizations that deal particularly with specific issues such as, for example, corruption. With Transparency International, we have World Justice Project regarding judiciary system, as well as we have also European Union as a governmental organization issuing and evaluating different countries, especially aspirant countries and candidate countries. Remember, Serbia has become a candidate country and has also opened its first chapter with regards to European integration. But yet, the European Parliament, the European Commission are all blaming Aleksandar Vučić and his regime as being becoming an autocratic regime that is controlling the whole state, especially media and civil society organization, as well as manipulating with the public sector employment. And considering this situation, and to go back to your question whether a change is possible, I think that this is one of the options that is calculating Vučić. Right now, I think he's trying to calculating also holding snap elections, decisions that will be made towards the end of the February, because he still has power over important state sectors, especially media and civil society organizations.
And that's a recurring tactic, isn't it? Like the government gets into trouble, they do snap elections to reinforce their legitimacy, don't they?
Yeah. Yes, they do, and this is he's going to use the resignation of prime minister and other figures or reshuffling of the government as something that he of his intervention in order to right some things, but it's all about his survival basically.
But that seems to be a fairly smart move, doesn't it? Because if he wins, he'll be able to say, okay, so the protesters are on the street, but the people have spoken. We won again. And this brings me to my next question also. You've mentioned the European Union, but do you think there is really a lot of pressure when it comes to democratic backsliding? In some countries, if there is a tiny bit of backsliding, many institutions and countries say, careful there, you might be moving away from the ideals that we share. But some leaders of the opposition in Serbia actually believe the West isn't doing enough. One of them has written an op-ed for Politico a while ago, and he said the West doesn't care. They are not really doing much. They seem to be more concerned about possible instability if Aleksandar Vučić is somehow removed from power.
Yeah, I think you're right, and we all agree about the whole situation. Just to go back again to his personality and he remained in politics from 90s, and we know that he was a member of Radical Party during 90s, and then also a minister of information for the government of Serbia at the late 90s during the Milosevic regime. And we know how situation developed in Yugoslavia during 90s, and it was all because of Milosevic's regime there. We had this bloodiest breakup of a country, bloodiest event in Europe since from the Second World War. And he somehow manages to pull himself away and still running Serbia as a president, and earlier for more than a decade now. So we are dealing with, let's say, highly manipulative and person that calculates to its precision his moves. And currently he is also calculating on international geopolitics, as we are facing unjustified and unprovoked Russian aggression over Ukraine. We see Europe more and more focusing on this front there, and Vučić is making calculations, so he's flip-flopping there, and he is in a way maybe calculating in a way that like blackmailing the European Union. So and EU, we see also some downside of the European Union because of not having a reliable, let's say, common foreign and security policy, which is, on this perspective, not being able to exert a real pressure over regimes like Aleksandar Vučić's regime in Serbia.
So he's taking advantage of that, right? But where does he stand internationally? Is he moving closer to Russia? Is he moving closer to the West? You said he was flip-flopping. But can he actually do that for an extended period of time? Because, I mean, Serbia is not Turkey. It doesn't have the same clout when it comes to its position on the global stage, right?
Yes, I think that we have two personalities here, and in a way we can say that we have some sort of cognitive dissonance here that is reflecting from President Vučić. From one perspective, I believe that Vučić knows that he cannot do that much about developing his relationship with Putin, because we are talking about Putin regime. I don't want to use that much the term Russian people, because I think it's all about a regime there in Russia as well. But on the other hand, he is using this nationalistic rhetorics based on some historical values or historical relationship between brothers, Serbia, Russia, and in this way trying to portray himself as in a very difficult position with regards to Serbia's position in this geopolitical situation that it's undergoing in Europe. On one way, Serbia is a candidate country for the European Union, and all candidate countries should align their foreign policies with that of the European Union. But on the other hand, Serbia refuses to place sanctions against Russia. And it was condemned, at least officially, by the European Union. But condemnation, I think it's not enough, because European Union should be more assertive, because it's about the prestige of the European Union. And if European Union shows that it cannot deal with a country, as you mentioned, it's not Turkey or a big country, if the European Union cannot deal with a country and a regime like Alexander Vučić, then what kind of an example will put for other countries in the world? Therefore, I think that European Union should do more, can do more. At least it has power of European Union integration. Lots of aid is coming from European Union to Serbia. And in this regard, it should make much more use of it to exert more pressure over Alexander Vučić.
To exercise this leverage, right?
Yeah.
Bespor Terecha was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your insight.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here with you.
And now we're moving on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you absolutely don't want to miss. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has criticized his country's past decision to give up Soviet nuclear weapons. Ukraine handed over its nuclear arsenal in 1994 in exchange for security guarantees from the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia.
Volodymyr Zelensky has been doing a bit of a media tour lately in the wake of Donald Trump taking office. He says he's optimistic about US pressure on Moscow leading to an end to its war against Ukraine. Nonetheless, the Ukrainian president admitted that he wasn't exactly sure about the details of his American counterpart's plan for achieving that goal. Donald Trump has vowed to bring an end to the war in Ukraine, which started with Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. For now, the new US administration has floated some ideas on how to push Russia to accept a peace deal, or at least a ceasefire. One of these methods would reportedly be economic sanctions, which Zelensky has praised. Ukraine's head of state also said that he has warned Trump of Russia not keeping its word, pointing to the Budapest Memorandum of 1994. As part of the agreement, Ukraine gave up its small nuclear stockpile in exchange for security guarantees. Zelensky has said that the decision to give up the nukes was, to quote, absolutely stupid, illogical, and very irresponsible.
A senior NATO official has confirmed that there, in fact, was a Russian scheme to kill the head of Germany's arms manufacturer Rheinmetall. The company has been instrumental in supplying Kiev with military equipment.
NATO's Deputy Assistant Secretary General for Innovation, Hybrid and Cyber says that the plot to kill Rheinmetall's CEO was foiled by US and German intelligence. The plot was apparently only a part of a broader Russian series of plans aimed at assassinating several European defense industry executives. This is the first time that a senior NATO, German or US official has gone on the record to confirm such a plot. The assassination plan was initially covered by various global media outlets in July 2024. The news comes as several NATO members have experienced sabotage incidents over the last couple of years. These are usually tied to Moscow. Russia reportedly recruits personnel for its plots online, usually using criminal gangs, unwitting youth or migrants to carry out the acts that it desires. The NATO official has also said that while these acts are often crudely done, they do have a purpose, which is to undermine support for Ukraine.
Reuters reports that China and India have suspended their March purchases of Russian oil. The news comes as US sanctions have driven up shipping costs, which may have made the purchases too costly for both countries.
Earlier this month, the US Treasury Department hit 183 vessels with sanctions. These included ships belonging to Russia's shadow fleet, which the country uses to bypass Western sanctions on oil. As a result of these measures taken by Washington, shipping on relevant Russian tankers has surged between $6.5 to $7.5 million to China and to $9 to $10 million to India. While fresh offers for March deliveries to China from Russian oil handlers have been put forward, no such measure has been offered to India. Although the sanctions are already in force, some tankers previously blacklisted by the US continue to offload oil in China and India under a waiver period. Some of these ships have been facing delays, however. This grace period allows the tankers to offload Russian oil by February 27th and finish any energy-related transactions by March 12th.
The Polish government has warned that Russia is attempting to recruit Polish citizens to interfere with the upcoming presidential elections. Moscow is reportedly trying to recruit people through the dark web.
These recruitment efforts are supposed to be aimed at spreading both disinformation and destabilizing Poland's political landscape ahead of the vote. The 2025 Polish presidential elections are scheduled for May 18th. Deputy Prime Minister Krzysztof Gawkowski says that Russian intelligence is offering potential recruits between 3,000 to 4,000 euros to spread disinformation during the election campaign. Gawkowski told Reuters that the money is directed from the Russian GRU and FSB services. These efforts have been observed by Polish authorities since early 2024. Poland already identified a Russian group focused on election interference earlier this month. Warsaw has emphasized that its role as a crucial logistics hub for military aid for Ukraine has made it a target for both Russian and Belarusian intelligence operations.
And for this episode of Eastern Express, it's the end of the line. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.